I have a serious story to tell you today about power, greed, and the price of a human life.
This isn't just a tale from the news. It is a warning about what happens when the world's richest men play God with the lives of the poor. Listen closely, because the consequences of these decisions are written in blood. In the year 2025, the air in Washington, D.C. was thick with the scent of radical change. Elon Musk, the billionaire titan, had moved from the stars to the very heart of the American government. He stood at the side of the president, not as a guest, but as an architect of a new, ruthless efficiency that threatened to dismantle decades of global stability. The bright lights of the White House briefing room flickered as Musk took the podium. Reporters leaned in, their cameras clicking like 1,000 insects.
Behind the veneer of innovation and progress lay a darker agenda, one that Nobel-winning economist Paul Krugman was already beginning to dissect with clinical precision. Miles away, in a room lined with leather-bound books and stocks of economic reports, Paul Krugman sat in shadow.
He adjusted his glasses, his fingers trembling slightly as he scrolled through the latest budget cuts. The data didn't just show numbers. It showed a terrifying trajectory of human suffering that the public had yet to grasp. Krugman leaned into the professional microphone, the red on-air light casting a crimson glow across the studio. He wasn't just recording another episode. He was preparing a verbal execution. His voice, usually measured and academic, carried a new, sharp edge of moral fury that resonated through the headphones of his listeners.
Krugman didn't mince words, calling Musk a horrible, terrible person with a track record of evil incompetence.
He described how Musk had ascended to become the second most powerful man in America. The economist's words were heavy, landing like stones in a quiet pool, ripples of controversy beginning to spread across the digital landscape.
The metaphor Krugman used was visceral. Musk had fed USAID to the wood chipper.
He wasn't just trimming the fat. He was destroying the very machinery of international survival.
Krugman argued that this wasn't a strategic move, but a callous act of destruction carried out by a man who didn't understand the value of a life he couldn't monetize.
The cuts targeted the most basic necessities of life: healthcare, nutritional assistance, and clean water.
These were the lifelines for millions of the world's most desperate people.
In Krugman's view, Musk had personally overseen the dismantling of these programs with a level of indifference that bordered on the psychopathic.
Across the globe, the impact was felt almost immediately. In regions already teetering on the edge of famine, the sudden disappearance of American aid was a death sentence. Families who relied on daily rations found themselves staring at empty horizons, wondering why the world had suddenly turned its back on them. Inside the Department of Government Efficiency, Musk sat surrounded by screens and loyalists. He viewed the world as a series of line items to be deleted. To him, the screams of the distant poor were just noise that interfered with the clean geometry of his balance sheets. Krugman's voice trembled as he spoke of evil and incompetence on enormous scales. He questioned why the media remained so silent while a tragedy of this magnitude was unfolding. He saw a world blinded by the celebrity of the billionaire, failing to notice the bodies piling up in his wake.
USAID had been the principal channel for reaching the poorest people on Earth.
It was the bridge between American resources and global survival. By burning that bridge, Krugman argued, Musk hadn't just saved money, he had engineered a global catastrophe that would take generations to repair. The evidence wasn't just theoretical, it was coming in from the field. Reports of widespread death were surfacing from health models and ground-level observers. Children who had survived on nutritional supplements were now falling ill, their bodies unable to cope with the sudden loss of support. Krugman's most devastating claim was that Musk had the blood of millions of children on his hands.
This wasn't hyperbole to the economist. It was the logical conclusion of the data.
Every canceled shipment of vaccines and every cut to a feeding program had a quantifiable cost in human souls. He described Musk's actions as a move of almost cartoonish cruelty. It was as if a villain from a storybook had gained real-world power, using it to dismantle the safety nets of the most vulnerable. The economist marveled at how someone could be so detached from the reality of their own actions.
Krugman drew a direct line between Musk and Donald Trump, calling them birds of a feather.
He described them as men who could dish it out, but can't take it. They were thin-skinned autocrats who demanded absolute loyalty while showing none to the people they were meant to serve. The takedown didn't stop at foreign aid. Krugman slammed Musk's schemes for domestic programs like Social Security. He saw a pattern of dismantling public trust and security in favor of private gain, a Ponzi scheme mentality that threatened the elderly in America just as it killed children abroad. Krugman even took aim at the crown jewel of Musk's empire, SpaceX. He suggested the valuation was a genuine rigging, a house of cards built on government contracts and hype. To the economist, the rockets weren't just vessels for exploration. They were distractions from the wreckage being left on Earth. Krugman mocked Musk's attempt to magify artificial intelligence. He called it insane to infuse technology with a narrow nationalist bias. He warned that an AI built on Musk's worldview would only amplify the cruelty and incompetence he had already demonstrated in the government. The story took a psychological turn, looking back at the man who shaped Elon Musk and still haunts him. The shadows of the past, of an upbringing in a divided South Africa, seemed to loom over his present decisions. The cycle of power and trauma continued to manifest in his global policies. Rumors of a seismic secret plan to gut watchdog boards began to leak. Musk wanted no oversight. He wanted a clear path to dismantle whatever remained of the administrative state. The checks and balances that protected the public were being systematically removed, like obstacles on a track. Even Hollywood stars were being weaponized or mocked in this political theater. Reporters revealed the president's fear of certain celebrities who were speaking out against Musk's influence. The culture war was being fought on the backs of the suffering, with fame as the ultimate currency. While the debates raged in the studios, the silence in the aid-dependent regions grew louder. Medicine cabinets in remote villages were now empty of life-saving insulin and malaria treatments. The efficiency Musk boasted of was in reality a silence of the grave. Krugman concluded his podcast with a chilling question. Why aren't we talking more about DOGE? He warned that the Department of Government Efficiency was just a fancy name for a demolition crew. If the public didn't wake up, the world would soon be a much smaller, much crueler place. As soon as the podcast aired, the internet exploded. Musk's supporters attacked Krugman with vitriol, while his critics used the Nobel winner's words as a rallying cry. The divide in the country grew into a canyon, with the lives of millions hanging over the edge. Musk didn't issue a press release. He lashed out on his own platform. He called Krugman a relic of the past and doubled down on his cuts. He viewed any criticism as a personal attack on his genius, proving Krugman's point that he could dish it out, but couldn't take it.
New reports confirmed the worst.
The field evidence Krugman mentioned was now a flood of data points.
Mortality rates in vulnerable populations had spiked by 20% since the cuts began.
The numbers were no longer just projections. They were names and lives lost.
Inside the USAID headquarters, longtime employees were being escorted out by security. These were people who had dedicated their lives to saving others, now treated like criminals for wanting to do their jobs.
The institutional knowledge of how to fight global hunger was being wiped clean. A new map was being drawn, not of nations, but of hunger. The areas where aid had been cut were turning a deep bruised purple on the screens of humanitarian agencies. This was the map of the world Musk was creating, a world divided into those who deserved to live and those who were too expensive to save. Back in the corporate world, investors were pleased. The efficiency was resulting in short-term gains and tax breaks for the ultra-wealthy. They toasted to the new era of accountability, oblivious or indifferent to the fact that their dividends were paid in the lives of children.
Despite the attacks, Paul Krugman refused to be silenced.
He began writing a series of articles detailing every single cut and its direct impact.
He knew he was fighting a giant, but he believed that the truth, documented and shared, was the only weapon that could stop the bleeding.
The story ends not with a resolution, but with a warning.
The millions of children who were lost would become the ghosts of the future, a generation that never was.
Their absence would haunt the global economy and the conscience of the world for 100 years.
Elon Musk sat alone in his high-tech sanctuary, surrounded by the fruits of his efficiency.
He had all the power and money in the world, yet he was more isolated than ever, protected by layers of security and sycophants from the reality of the blood on his hands.
Slowly, the public began to see through the celebrity veneer.
Protests sparked by Krugman's data began to form outside government buildings. People who had never cared about foreign aid were now carrying photos of the children who had been lost, demanding accountability.
Other nations began to step up, forming a coalition to replace the aid America had withdrawn.
They called it the Human Life Fund. It was a sign that while one man could cause immense damage, the collective will of humanity to survive and care for one another could not be so easily broken. As Krugman predicted, the savings turned out to be an illusion.
The global instability caused by the aid cuts led to supply chain collapses and regional wars that cost the American economy 10 times what had been saved.
The evil incompetence was now a financial reality for everyone. History would eventually judge the billionaire not for his rockets to Mars, but for his failures on Earth.
The name Musk became synonymous not with innovation, but with a period of dark, unrestrained greed that cost the world its most precious resource, its children.
Back in the classroom, the teacher looked at his students, who were now completely captivated.
He told them that the power to change this story lay in their hands.
They must value life over balance sheets and empathy over cold efficiency, or they would repeat the mistakes of the men who came before them. The story of Krugman versus Musk wasn't just a political spat. It was a battle for the 21st century. As the world watched, the question remained: would we be remembered as a species that reached for the stars, or as one that let its own children perish in the dust? This story is a reminder that we must hold the powerful accountable for the consequences of their actions. If you believe that human life is worth more than a billionaire's ego, then you must stand up and be heard.
If you enjoyed this deep dive into the truth,
Smash that subscribe button and share this story with the world.